Alright, so in the last video, we were able to get everything working, and in this video, what we're going to do now is the following. So, whenever we shoot an asteroid or meteor, it doesn't explode, so it's kind of bland, and that's what we're going to be adding today, is we're just going to be adding an explosion. Okay, so the first thing is that you would need to have some of the images, okay, and so these are the images that we're going to be working with today. The ones that say regular explosions. Okay, there should be 9 of them. And then the ship explosions, which we might not get to in this video, but we can do that in the next video. And this would be the final explosion after all the meteors have hit the ship. And then this is the final one before you die, right? Versus these are the ones that maybe the smaller meteors will hit and you'll see like small explosions on the ship, or if you were to shoot an asteroid, these would be the explosions that we'd be using. Okay, and if we were to kind of look at this, and let me just see if I can open this all at once, right? When you see an image on the screen, it's not like one image, one whole, like, I guess, GIF um being put there. It's actually a bunch of different images being put together. Now I did get this from Kids Can Code, and I believe he got this from Kenny, which is on opengameart.org, and it's fantastic. So he drew out every single frame of the explosion, and this is what we're going to be using. Every frame is going to be one image immediately put after each other after a certain amount of time. So before we do that, we need to upload these images. Okay, so I'm going to scroll on down to where we were uploading our images here. Okay, and we're just going to put a new space, and I'm just going to put explosion images. Okay, explosion images. You don't need to put this. I'm just putting this as for just organization. All right. So there are different ways to do this. The best way I think would be to use a dictionary, but since I haven't really explored dictionaries too much with my own students, we're just gonna do this using a list. So we're gonna have small explosion, okay, and we'll make another one for large explosions. OSION, EX, oh sorry, EXPL OSION. Okay, and then finally we'll have one for the ship explosion, which we will possibly do in this video or most likely the next one. Okay, so the small explosion, this is for when the meteor hits the ship. So when the meteor hits the ship, this would be then when the bullet hits the meteor, and then this would be the final explosion of the ship when it loses health, which we also don't have right now, but we will definitely put that in. All right, so right below that, we're gonna do the same thing that when we had that we did with the asteroid, where we have this little for loop. Okay, now notice that the ones we're gonna import right now, this is the regular explosion 00, 01, 02, 03, and they go all the way up to 8, right? And it's all consecutive. So we can say now for I in range. Okay, now I don't need to do 1, 6. We only did that because the asteroid started at the number 1 and ended at 5. Okay, here we started 00, so we can just say in range of 9. Okay, because it goes all the way up to the number before it, since we started the 0th term. And we're going to say image is equal to, now we, instead of using pygame.image.load and all the other stuff, we actually created, right, we created this definition here. Okay, so it was get image, and we passed the file name as well as the color key, the color around the image that we wanted to make transparent. So we'll say image is equal to get image, okay, passing the file name, which is going to be, in this case, regular, capital E for explosion, 00. So regular explosion, PLOSION, 00.png. Oops, sorry about that, .png. Okay, now I'm going to go back here, and we're going to replace that last 0 with these curly braces. All right, it's more like a placeholder, and then I can use .format and put I in there. So as we go through each iteration on the loop, I goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this number will change 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 5, so that it matches perfectly with these numbers here. Okay, so we're just going to automatically import that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the color that we had to made transparent was black. Okay, cool. Now after that, we need to then append these images, right? So here we uploaded the image, we set that image, right? For each loop, we're gonna set the image equal to this variable, and then we're going to use the same image to make a large explosion for when we hit the meteor, and then a small explosion for when we hit the ship. Okay, so we're going to say large explosion dot append. Now, here's the thing: is that we would need to scale the image to be bigger or smaller depending on what it is that we need to use. To do that, what you could do, I guess, is that you could be like new image, and don't write this down because I'm not going to use this. We could do pygame dot transform dot scale, whatever it is that we want to scale, and then we can do append that, right? And you know what, this is actually perfectly fine, right? But it just takes a little bit, it takes up an extra line, and you know what, we don't have to do that. So what we'll do is we'll put the transformation inside of the parentheses so that it does that first and then appends it to the list. So inside of here we'll do pygame.transform.scale. Okay, what is it that we're going to be transforming? We're going to be transforming the image, right? That's this guy. And since this is a large explosion, we'll make this comma, remember it's a tuple, right? So its own parentheses, 80, 80. Okay, so you should have 3 parentheses at the end of this. So be careful with that. Then we will also append the same image, because remember it's the same image right now. We're just scaling it big for the large explosions and then scaling it down for the smaller ones. So small explosion dot append. Okay, pygame dot transform dot scale. Okay, same thing, image, and then we'll make these 35, 35, right? So a little bit smaller. And then that's all we're gonna have here. Okay, so now we have these 2 lists that were initially empty are now occupied with 9 images. Okay, because this goes around 9 times, and it will make them bigger and smaller. All right. Now let's think about when is this going to occur? So we need to, let's go down here and let's first work with if the bullet hits a meteor. Okay, so as it stands right now, we have bullet collision, which is a list of all of the events that hold any kind of collision between the bullets and the meteors. Okay, and then we use the for loop to go through each of those collisions, and every single time a bullet hit a meteor, we spawned a new one and we increased the score. All right, so what we're going to do now is right above all of this, we're going to create an object. Now we have not created this explosion class, okay, which we will do immediately after this. But what we want is that for every single time that there's a collision, we're going to create that explosion image, right? And where do we want to put this? So we want to put the explosion right in the middle of the meteor. Okay, so we're going to be passing 2 things. The first thing is that we want to just have one class for when it hits the ship, from when the meteor hits the ship, when a bullet hits the meteor, and then the final explosion when the ship actually explodes. We don't want to have 3 different classes for that. It makes no sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass 2 things here. We're going to pass the type of explosion. In this case, we want a large explosion. Okay, so I'm passing this list, right? Because this was the list that we used to gather all the images. And I'm going to be passing collision dot rect dot center. Okay, now if you remember from the other videos, these attributes, these rect attributes are returned, okay, and they are stored inside this list. And so for every single time that there's a collision, it takes note of that. We can still access that. And so when we cycle through this list, if I want to grab the center of a specific meteor, like at the second time that the meteor hit the asteroid, I want to grab that center of that meteor and take and then transfer that and pass it to the explosions. Okay, so it's going to go through each one, and then it's going to grab the center for that specific meteor and then create an explosion around that meteor. Okay, so that's what this collision.rect.center does. So now we need to go back and, well, finally, actually, we'll do all sprites explosion. Otherwise, we won't even see it. And we're gonna come back up here now and make the explosion class. So I'm gonna, where did I have all my classes? Right here. All right. So we have now class explosion. PyGame.sprite define init. Right now I'm messing up today a lot. Self PyGame.sprite.init self. Okay. So again, since we're passing two arguments, we need to put them here, right? Two parameters here. So the first one, and they have to be in the same order. Okay, these are positional arguments, so they need to be in the correct order. So I'm going to scroll back down, and what do we have first? We had the type of explosion, in this case the large, and then we had the center of where it would be. So I'm going to type here maybe explosion size and then center. So I'm passing the type of explosion, and we can start off with that. So self.explosion size. Okay, so I'm creating an attribute that's going to hold the type of explosion, which was a list of the images, right? It's a lot going on there. So it's like we're passing a lot, right? So explosion size, and then self dot image is going to be self dot explosion size, okay, 0. Why? Okay, so if you know why, fantastic. I still want to go through it. Here is, actually I should start over here because I want to make sure everyone understands this. Here we created the list, right? Then we appended 9 images to this list. So now this list has 9 images. Then every single time that there was an explosion for a meteor and a bullet, we passed this entire list, all 9 images, okay? And we passed that, and then when we come up here now, we're saying that the image is going to be the first image in that list, right? Because we passed large explosion list to this then gets set assigned here, right, creating an attribute. So whenever I want to refer to that list, I use this. So that's why I'm saying this is basically the large explosion in brackets 0, which means like the first image in that list. Okay, and that makes sense. We want that. Then we have self.rect. Of course, we always have to take a rectangle around the image. Self.image.getRect. Whoa. And then self.rect.center. Okay, this is going to be this center, which was the center of the meteor. Okay, because we want the explosion to occur at the center of the meteor to make it look nice. All right. Now, from there, we have to think about how we're going to do this. So everything is going to occur in the update. Okay, so we're going to say, if you remember that these explosions, okay, are single images that we need to display after a certain number of seconds. So maybe like 1/4 of a second, we do this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. And it's going to pass by so fast that's going to look like one fluid image, or one fluid movement is what I should say. So we'll say after a certain amount of time, display the next image. Okay, so something like that. So to do that, we would need a couple of things. First thing is that we need to have, or we need to keep track of how long it takes before we can move on to the next image. So we can say last frame is equal to PyGame. Move this whole mouse out the way. PyGame.time.getTicks. Okay, and then we can say self.currentFrame is going to be 0. Okay, that's essentially this piece, right? We're currently right now, as soon as we start, we're on the 0th frame, or the in the 0th position, which is the first image. Okay, and what else would we need? Actually, I think that might be everything. All right, so when we call this update, we're going to have, let's say, current time. It's pygame.time.getTicks. All right. Remember, that keeps track of the time as soon as in milliseconds. Okay, so as soon as it's called, it starts keeping track of time. And we say if the current time minus self.last frame is greater than 40 milliseconds. Okay, and we're gonna test this out and see how it works. Sometimes it might be too slow, sometimes the explosion might be too fast and it doesn't look real. And so we want to get like that nice centered a number of seconds. So if the current time minus self.last frame is greater than 40, then we're going to set last frame to the current time. Okay, just the same way we did all the other ones. Then we'll say self that the current frame. Okay, so if enough time has passed, then whatever the current frame is, add 1 to it. So it goes from 0 to 1. That's essentially going from 0 to 1. Okay, all right. Now from there, we need to create a new image, because when you move from that first image to the second one, you essentially have a new image. We need to display that new image. So we have self.image is equal to, now how would you define the image for the second one? Okay, that would be self.explosion size. Okay, remember that's what we used to call it to reference the list. And we're going to do self.current frame. Okay, we're not going to write 1 there, because this is going to be changing, adding 1 every single time. So this would be 0, then 1, then 2. And get rect around it. Equals self.image.getRect. And the last thing that we want to do here is we also want to make sure that we have the explosion occurring at the center. It'd be kind of weird if the explosion was like following the meteor. You want it to be at the first center of the image, or where the meteor hit. That's where you want the explosion to be. So we're going to create another variable here, which we'll call it old center, kind of like what we used in the last one, right? Self.rect.center. And then down here now, after we've created the new image, after we've created the new rect, then we can do self.rect.center and set this back equal to the old center. Right now, please refer to the other videos if you're not too sure how this works. I tried to explain it then, so please reference that. All right, now here's what's going to happen if we do that. Now, assuming we have no mistakes. Okay. So let's see. All right. So you'll see now, it shot the bullet. Now, and I'm going to replay that because you know what? I should probably tell you. I want you to look at the last frame that actually show. Excuse me. That actually shows. All right. Here we go. So check this out again. Okay. Shoot. And the whole explosion looked perfect, except that we got to this last frame here, this like smoky part that's about to, dissipate into the air, and then we got slammed with an error. And the error says list index is out of range, and it tells you exactly where. Okay, that's when we were creating a new image. It's saying, okay, you know what, we can't find this last image to display. It's out of the range, it's not there. That's because the computer doesn't know not that there's only specifically 9 images in that list and not to go forward. Okay, so we need to tell it that if the current frame is on the last image, stop the image. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come over here and we're going to have an if statement. Okay, so if self.current frame, okay, is equal to the length of the list, which is self.explosion size, okay, then self.kill, which simply means we're just going to stop displaying that image. We're going to remove it from the groups, right? Otherwise, continue with everything else. Okay, so just to recap that, essentially this is going to say, oh, okay, if the current frame is 3, is that equal to the length of the list, which was 9, since there's 9 images? No. Okay, display, create a new image and display it all, right? When it gets to 9 now, all right, it knows, okay, this is the last frame. After you display this, kill it, because by the time you go around again, all right, and by the time this is called again, if we were to add a 1 to this, it would be 10, and then now we're out of the index. So this will prevent it from going out. And just to show that, let's run this really quickly. All right, so now we have nice fluid explosions. And remember that these explosions are all nine of those images being displayed um, every 40 milliseconds. A new portion of that image is being projected onto the screen. Okay. And so the next thing that we would have to do, I realize that I'm way over time right now, is that we would have to do for when the meteor hits the ship, right? And that's not going to be too hard. We actually have the whole foundation here. And then we'd have to talk about how to do it, like a final explosion, player lives, the shield, the health, all that other stuff, which will continue in a different video.